Now, before everyone panics and says, oh no, a central bank, it's a little different than that. What is up, Hash Nation? Today is Tuesday, and you know what that means. It's Token Talk Tuesday. Today we are talking about Skycoin, an Internet 3.0 ecosystem that's really looking to change the way that we interact with each other every single day, and to address an array of problems that our modern internet ecosystem struggles with. So without further ado, let's hash it out. Guys, really quickly, if we're just meeting, my name is Forrest. I'm a blockchain developer in industry, and I started this channel with the hopes of helping you build your knowledge, boost your cryptocurrency gains, to help you join the movement towards our distributed, decentralized future. If all that stuff sounds really good to you and you want to join that movement, hit the subscribe button down below and smash that bell notification button so we can hang out every time I post new content. Skycoin's main goal is to create a new internet for the new world. And after doing my research on this platform and what it's all about, there is a lot to talk about. There's a lot of stuff going on here, and their roadmap is huge. First and foremost, two of the founders were actually in the open source community involved with Bitcoin and Ethereum early on. And so they definitely come from the pedigree that we want when building these platforms. Obviously, having deep roots in the open source community within the cryptocurrency world is a good thing. And one of the founders from the Bitcoin open source community and the other was from the Ethereum open source community. So that I really enjoy. Now, I think one of the keys in this space is to be problem focused, be problem centric. And let's first look at what Skycoin's target problem is. What are they going to try to solve? Now, in this modern day and age, the war rages on about net neutrality, and a lot of the protections given to us as internet consumers and users have either been abused or taken away. And that's one of the scary things about being an internet consumer these days. Internet service providers are able to essentially charge anyone whatever they want for services because, quite frankly, no one has any other choice. They can control content you see, they can serve certain content to you based on your own data. And there are a lot of internet service providers and companies that take full advantage of the lack of protection there is out there for internet users. Now, Skycoin wishes to take what the internet was supposed to be and really bring it to the forefront with technology backed by blockchain. And to make matters worse, the underpinnings of the internet, the transmission control protocol, the internet protocol, TCP/IP, is inefficient, and it's a 40-year-old archaic solution to a really, really unique problem that we have now in the internet with the massive, massive amounts of traffic, data, and users there is out there. TCP/IP being used today in the internet is essentially like Uber drivers being dispatched without access to GPS maps. It's essentially them having to go pick somebody up, find their way there, pick that person up, and then manually figure out the route with a map in their finger to figure out where they're supposed to drop that person off. It's a really inefficient way of doing things, and it's very, very, very slow compared to some of the alternatives that we have out there today. And these problems aren't new. Companies have been taking advantage of loose rule sets and really, in general, being greedy for a long time. And the TCP/IP system has been under pretty staunch criticism for a long time. The internet is due for an evolution. All that being said, Skycoin is a platform that's looking to change the game as it relates to the internet and how it's governed and really how user-centric it is. Skycoin is really looking to deliver internet services and connectivity around the world using a mesh network. And a mesh network is basically a web of devices that are all interconnected to one another via a communication layer that all can share information and connect without one central source of failure. Now, to form this mesh network, there has to be a set of hardware devices that all run the same software so they can talk to each other. And that mesh network is called Skywire within the Skycoin ecosystem. Now, Skywire is that universal VPN internet software that runs on all the hardware that creates this network in the Skycoin ecosystem. So that's one important thing for you to note going forward. Skywire is referring to the overall mesh network. Of course, we've mentioned hardware. So to implement this, you probably are thinking now that Skycoin, this ecosystem, Skywire itself has to have hardware to really make this work. So we need hardware for this mesh network. And that's where a device called the Skyminer comes in. Now, Skyminer is a Linux-based piece of hardware that packs quite a punch and it's used as the preliminary nodes on the network to form this mesh. Skyminer is a piece of hardware that's essentially a custom VPN server that is used as the primary infrastructure for the Skywire ecosystem. The Skyminer basically has router and networking capabilities and a lot of compute resources to allow different applications to run on these different servers. Now, these Skyminers were designed by the Skycoin founders and their team, and they're actually currently available right now for purchase, the version 1, at about $2,000 in the Skyminer store. Now, that being said, it's not a cheap device by any stretch, but the goal is to make this device very powerful, very capable, but also cheap enough for most people to be able to buy it. Hopefully improvements are made to the overall cost of running a Skyminer node, but we shall see how that goes in the future. So the Skywire network is looking to improve on the current internet ecosystem in a handful of different ways. And first of all, the Skywire ecosystem is meant to provide internet services with IP addresses protected. So if you're a user and you're searching or you're surfing, whatever, you're expecting to have your privacy. You're expecting your data to be private. And that's one of the core tenets of Skycoin and Skywire network. And nodes that are running on Skyminer hardware are helping provide that service to people that want to use the internet through Skycoin and Skywire. And those users are rewarded in Skycoins. We'll talk more about Skycoins later on, so hang tight. To address the pitfalls of TCP/IP, Skycoin and the Skywire network uses multi-protocol label switching, or MPLS, which is a much more efficient and much more 21st century worthy approach to routing internet traffic and sending packets of data. MPLS is the metaphorical Waze maps or GPS maps provided to the Uber drivers in the example that we gave above. Long story short, it makes things more efficient, it makes things faster, and it's basically allowing traffic to go through the network on a critical path, or the shortest path, rather than having to read through a list of a bunch of addresses and go basically in a straight line pinging from one to the other. Another really important factor in this MPLS system is that there's no requirement that the data packets have to be exposed to figure out where they're supposed to go. So it's more of a privacy by design rather than having to account for that later on in the process like you do in TCP/IP in the traditional sense of the internet. One thing to note though is that MPLS is not new technology. This has been around for a while, and it's another example of how blockchain and other innovative startups are taking older technology and using it for something that's very core and very basic and really changing the game with it. Bitcoin is very similar. Bitcoin was a lot of different technologies that have existed for a long time, but it was carefully crafted and carefully put together with other game theory and sociological rules that really make it work. So MPLS, even though it's old and even though it's not brand new, doesn't mean that it is not a good solution to the problems that we have with the internet. To be quite honest, any label-based networking methodology is better than TCP/IP in my humble opinion, so I'm all for this type of move. Now, like we said before, you might be wondering where Skycoin or the network token comes into play, so let's discuss that now. Skycoin is a Bitcoin-based token, and it has a fixed supply of 100 million Skycoins total. However, Skycoin is not mined the same way that Bitcoin is. It does not use proof of work, and it also doesn't use proof of stake. Rather, Skycoin has a consensus mechanism called Obelisk, and that name really reminds me of that like Yu-Gi-Oh card, Obelisk the Tormentor. No? Oh, okay, sorry. Obelisk is also referred to as a web of trust consensus mechanism, meaning it is a measure of the trustworthiness or the overall value that a given node provides to the network overall. Now, you might be wondering, how in the world could you potentially measure trust in an ecosystem like this? Well, they have a methodology that they think will measure trust. Now, this trust in the Obelisk web of trust consensus mechanism is really derived from how many subscribers or connections a given node has from others. So in an ecosystem where there's no central source of failure for internet, there's no central source where internet comes from, everyone is doing their job in this mesh network to provide internet service to others. So if you have a Skyminer piece of hardware and you're providing internet service to a bunch of people, the more connections, the more subscribers you have to your channel or your node on this mesh network, the more you're rewarded and the more that you are overall considered trustworthy in the network. And conversely, if someone sees, hey, you're doing something sketchy, I'm gonna disconnect from you and unsubscribe, I'm gonna move to someone else, then that shows, hey, you're maybe not the most trustworthy person and you should be penalized, right? So the measure of trust is how many active subscribers or active connections you have to your particular node of service. Now, this may remind you of people who were doing file sharing. If you were, doing peer-to-peer file sharing and you were connected to a seeder, someone who has the file that you're looking for, and you're trying to pull from their computer, and all of a sudden you see that sketchy stuff is happening, you're going to disconnect from that. You're going to disconnect and move to someone else. It's the same concept. The idea behind this is that hopefully in an ideal world, anyone who is conducting things in a malicious manner will be found out very quickly, and people will disconnect and move away from that node of service to another one that is more trustworthy and doing their job properly. And that provides this incentive for people to do the right thing, because you can't be rewarded for providing service if you have no connections and no one trusts you. So that's the whole idea behind this obelisk web of trust. Now, you also may be wondering how in the world anyone would know if you're doing sketchy stuff. Now, that's where things get a little interesting. Each one of these nodes, or each one of these providers, maybe the Skyminers you could call it, they all have their own private blockchain network within that little pocket or within that node. And what that blockchain network does is it really just keeps an easily auditable, transparent record of all the internet tasks or all of the transactions, etc. Things that have been done at that node, right? By that node. So if a network provider is doing really weird stuff, it'll be very clear to anyone that is going through that audit trail, or that basically digital ledger of what's been happening. So that provides this transparency about what's going on within that node that's providing internet service. So if there's a bunch of weird transactions or, malware being processed through this, ideally it would be easy to spot and people could unsubscribe and move to another person or move to another node. Now, the real good thing about this type of consensus mechanism that's not heavily invested in hashing or how many tokens you have, etc., is that it can be run on mostly any device. Even lightweight devices like smartphones that don't have a lot of juice, that don't have a lot of power, can run this and really participate in the network in every way. And that's super great for adoption. If you can use a smartphone, or you can use a really weak computer like an old Chromebook to connect and do what you're supposed to do, I think that makes it easier for everybody. Now, of course, this whole concept of a mesh network might be making sense to you at this point, that all these individual pieces of hardware providing connectivity to one another, and that makes perfect sense. However, you might be thinking, okay, well, these are all just providing internet service. Where is the main blockchain? Where are all the coins coming from? What is happening? How could you deploy dapps to this whole thing? And that's where this main blockchain network layer called Fiber comes into play here. And Fiber is really the decentralized blockchain underpinning of this entire mesh network that provides internet. So you can think about it like you have this internet protocol layer, and then sitting right on top of that is the Fiber blockchain network. The Fiber is a scaling focused blockchain network that's intended to provide a really easy to use platform for dApp developers and other application developers to build things on the Skycoin and Skywire ecosystem. And to further the process of privatizing things and making transactions difficult to track and maintaining your overall privacy on the blockchain network, this blockchain, the Fiber blockchain, uses CoinJoin. Basically, CoinJoin means that when you issue transactions at the time of consensus, multiple transactions are kind of bunched together and clumped together into one, so that if you were to go back through each block and the contents of the transactions therein, you wouldn't really be able to discern whose transaction were whose and how many outputs and inputs came from which people, because it's all mashed together. And that's the current way that some platforms are going about privatizing transactions. Just so you know, that's built in here, and that's one of the core focuses of Skywire, making it private, decentralized, and giving the internet back to the people. So what are Skycoins actually used for? And that really brings us to the most important point, and that's about coin hours. Now, coin hours are essentially a unit of measure or a bandwidth measure within the Skywire ecosystem that helps you pay for different network services, whether that be issuing transactions, interacting with a decentralized application, renting file storage locations, so on and so forth. And coin hours have a one-to-one relationship with Skycoins in a given user's wallet. So let's just take this hypothetical scenario here. If you have a Skycoin wallet, not on a hardware wallet, not somewhere else, but on the Skycoin wallet client, and you hold 25 Skycoins, every single hour you will be allocated 25 coin hours to use for different network actions. Now these coin hours again are what you use to pay for the services that you are provided on the internet. So at launch, the first 25% of Skycoin tokens were released into supply. And then the rest of the 75% are being released on a trickle-down basis. So every year, 5% more tokens will be released into the ecosystem. Obviously, token economics aside, we're not on mainnet yet with Skycoin, so it's really hard to tell what's going to happen. Question of the day time, guys. Let me know above, what are you thinking of Skycoin so far? Do you like it? Are you not really a fan, or are you sort of on the fence and want to watch the rest of the video? Let me know in the poll above. I'm really curious to hear what you think. Now, not taking away from all the cool stuff that we've already talked about here, but this is where I really like to play, in the dApp development space, in the product development space. The Skycoin team has developed their own coding language called CX, which is based off of Golang. And for anyone who's used Golang, it's really easy to use and it's pretty straightforward. So I'm definitely excited to see something built on Golang. When creating a custom programming language, the idea here is that Skycoin wants to encourage developers to build things that are native to hardware and software on the Skycoin infrastructure. Now, this is a good thing because obviously we have this issue with fragmentation out there today where developers are building specifically for one platform, but a lot of the tools are the same, so it's not necessarily optimized for the platform. So if you're using an EVM or an Ethereum virtual machine enabled platform, you're writing in Solidity, but like Cardano maybe, they have a separate Haskell-based programming language that they prefer. If you're writing Solidity contracts because you're comfortable with those, they may not be native to the platform and they won't run as well. So it's something where when you have a native language, you want to encourage developers to use that native language. What do you need to do to make them want to use that native language? You have to give them tools, you have to give them documentation. You guys must know this by now. I'm a documentation fiend, love to see documentation. And this is really where I'm excited about CX within the Skycoin ecosystem. They have released a book, yes, a book that teaches you what you need to know about using CX. I did have a chance to read through that book and go to the GitHub page and read through the issue tracker to see what things they're tracking and how things are looking so far based on my limited research. Mind you, limited research. The book looks super comprehensive. I read through some of it, makes sense to me. I like it. I'm gonna definitely do some more reading and some more learning about what that's all about. And heck, maybe I'll pick up some sort of hardware project. Maybe I'll do a Raspberry Pi IoT sensor project with CX and Skycoin. We will see, we will see. I always say, you give a developer a nice computer, they'll get lost and do some cool stuff. But if you give a developer lots of nice, crispy, clean documentation, they will build you a dope application really, really, really fast. So I'm super stoked that they're taking it seriously and they're making it available for people to go out there and build with CX instead of just making a language being like, yeah, it's cool. It's a cool language. You're on your own learning it though. No one likes that. And I think coming from the open source background, coming from projects like Bitcoin and Ethereum, the folks that founded this project understand that. They understand that developers need to be welcomed into the community and have a place to actually learn, or else they're not going to build things. So definitely hats off to them for that. The Fiber blockchain is intended to be a dApp development ecosystem. It's intended to provide infrastructure for that, but there's not been a lot of movement yet. There's some interesting applications like private messaging and a social media platform and a couple other things being developed by the Skycoin group themselves, but I'm wondering when more developers are going to jump on, probably towards mainnet release, and I hope we see more of that in the future. If there are any dApps out there on the Skycoin testnet that I'm not aware of, let me know below. I know there's like one kind of like kitty or crypto kitty oriented type of dApp, but I couldn't find too much information on that one. But anyways, moving on from the developer stuff, let's talk about the real meat and potatoes of this Skycoin ecosystem, and that's coin hours. So let's talk about coin hours some more and the obelisk process of consensus, because I think it's very important to understand how that works and conversely why it's better than what we have according to the Skycoin team. So unlike the Bitcoin ecosystem or Ethereum, etc., in proof of work where you have to give a transaction fee in your network token, so Bitcoin or Ether, in order to issue transactions and do something, in this case, you're using coin hours, which is, again, like I said, a non-token asset. It's not something that you're given like Skycoins. It's every hour you get coin hours relative to how many Skycoins you have in your wallet at that moment. With that being said, when coin hours are essentially created in mass out of thin air over time every hour, for different people. It's essentially an inflationary currency by nature. It's gonna pretty much increase in supply exponentially over time. So to combat this, Skycoin introduced something called the Coin Hour Bank. Now, before everyone panics and says, oh no, a central bank, it's a little different than that. Now, to prevent inflation from running rampant, the Coin Hour Bank essentially establishes a 50% burn rate of coin hours for unspent outputs. So let's take an example to make this abundantly clear. If you had 100 Skycoins in your wallet and you wanted to send one of those Skycoins to John McAfee. Now, if you wanted to send that, it's obviously going to have a network cost to send the transaction, but you're also going to have coin hours and unspent output to make this transaction valid on a Bitcoin-based transaction structure. Obviously, like we said before, if you have 100 tokens in your wallet, you're going to have 100 coin hours allocated to you for network actions. So when you send that transaction of one Skycoin over to John McAfee, it's going to have a cost of, let's just say, 25 coin hours. That leaves a leftover of 75. Now, the burn comes in here, where because you had 100 coin hours and you issued a transaction, at the end, it's going to be half of whatever your total coin hours were. So in this case, it's 50. We had 100 coin hours to start. We sent a transaction, it used 25. You're going to burn 50% of the original amount. That's 50. So overall, from that transaction, 75% of those coin hours have been burned or used, leaving 25 left over for you in that account. Now, this only happens for the final transaction, the last unspent output in a series. So if you had, let's just say, 50 transactions, which is crazy, and you had enough coin hours to cover the cost of those, only the last unspent output would cause that 50% burn. So you're not losing 50% every time you issue a transaction. It's within a bundle. Now, this whole thing adds another layer of complexity, and I understand why, because they don't want inflation to explode over time in a very short period, because that would devalue coin hours so much that it would take an insane amount to do anything, and I think it would put some downward pressure on the Skycoin ecosystem in general. Now, over time, this buyback program or the burn program that the Coin Hour Bank is facilitating is going to reduce. So it's going to hit 30% and then eventually go down to 0. And I do think this adds another layer of complexity and opacity to the whole process, because it's very unclear about what coin hours are going to be worth, so on and so forth, and there's all this monetary policy going on. I quote them on saying this: until coin hours reach a fair market value on their own. We shall see. I'm not sure how it's going to play out and what we're going to see on the mainnet, but I'll be very curious to see how the coin hour inflation rate goes based on this approach. Now, there's one crucial thing that we haven't yet talked about as it relates to the overall consensus process within Obelisk, or this web of trust. One thing you need to know is that there are two types of distinct nodes that play a part in this consensus process. There is consensus nodes and block making nodes. Well, these block making nodes, on intervals as transactions come in, they have to send information to consensus nodes. What is this information that they're sending? Essentially, these block making nodes are taking collections of all these different transactions and doing a lot of the same type of validation work that traditional mining nodes would do in the Bitcoin ecosystem, for example. They're collecting these transactions, validating them against network rules, but instead of hashing, they're actually just distributing those potential blocks out to the network overall. Now, at this point, this is where the consensus nodes come in. Now, these consensus nodes gather up all the prospective blocks coming from block making nodes on the network. And then these consensus nodes essentially compare results with one another. And from there, these consensus nodes have to determine which block is the winner, which one is going to be the finalized verified block. And how they do this is it's basically a result of which block took the most block makers to find and to create. So essentially, the more block making nodes that contribute to the creation of a block, and obviously if that block passes all the fraud and double spend rules, that will be the block that wins. So essentially, you have block making nodes taking transactions, creating blocks and working together to do that, sharing those across the network, and then the consensus nodes are doing another method of validation, which is finding out which block is going to be the winner based on crowd participation. And one of the things that Skycoin really touts about this is that this is 51% attack resistant or 51% attack proof. Now, from a traditional sense of the word, it is absolutely, because there's no iterative hashing. However, I wonder, and this is more of a question than a statement, but I wonder if a large proportion of the network decided we're going to create valid transactions, but transactions that are transactions with the intention of taking down the network or something of the sort. If enough people colluded together as block makers to create a block that was actually malicious, if based on the rule that the more block makers and the more effort that's put into a block being the winner, if that could potentially be a threat. There's obviously a lot going on in Skycoin. There's so many layers to it because it really is trying to build this all from the ground up. A new internet ecosystem on which this blockchain can run. A new blockchain with a new coin with a different consensus process altogether overall. And then an entire new language of building things, which is CX, and different storage processes using another variety of that language. And all of this stuff, all of this building that they're having to do has been going on since late 2012, early 2013. So it's been a long time since they started development on this. However, I will be truly amazed if all of this comes to fruition in the super near future. They've already made a lot of progress on testnet, but I want to see how things look when mainnet comes around, hopefully in 2019. So I know that was a lot of information. It was a lot of information for me to absorb, and I'm still learning about Skycoin. However, let's talk about my overall thoughts, positives, negatives, and just overall takeaways. Now, first of all, I am very, very, very impressed with the overall approach they've taken to this CX language, this new language for dapps and different hardware, software implementations within the Skycoin ecosystem. Like I said, I'm stoked to see they have a book about this whole process. They're very transparent on GitHub about the issue tracker and what's going on. I was able to follow what's happening there, and that's definitely a good thing. And beyond that, I hope that they continue that trend and they continue creating things like a playground would be fantastic, like they have for Plutus within Cardano. Having a playground for people to test applications and having developer tools for us to use, that would be great. Keep up the good work on that front. And hardware. Hardware is something that I don't think I've ever seen a project to date really approach hardware. I know IOTA had different hardware capability structures and things that they wanted to build for IOTA specifically, but that was pretty limited scope. Here they have Skyminers, which are basically like souped up telecom computing resources that help run this mesh network. They have radio signal transmitters. If you've seen my video about Gotenna linked above, it's very similar technology to help facilitate a mesh network of connectivity. They have a hardware wallet custom and native to the platform coming soon. All of this hardware is very, very impressive. The fact that they've had the time to build out hardware, and I know it's not like a novel idea, I know it's not all brand new stuff, but it's taking things that exist now and making them better so that they can apply to this ecosystem. And doing everything in-house takes longer, it costs more. Maybe you could say it's a little more centralized because they're building everything themselves, but I'm really impressed with the hardware capabilities that they have. I'm really impressed with the devices that they're building. That's really cool. And finally, I really like the fact that they're taking a full stack approach. I've always been of the mind, if you don't like something, then change it. If you think something's broken, then fix it. And it's almost always better to do things on your own than to wait for someone else to fix it for you. Now, I do love that whole idea, and I love that Skycoin here is taking something that's a full stack problem. It's the internet is not what it's supposed to be. And all the things on top of that are also not what it's supposed to be. So how can you solve all those problems? They want to just build it all from scratch. They want to try and get people off of this traditional ecosystem onto theirs and to participate and really just take control of the experience of connectivity that we all love and enjoy once and for all. Now, there are a handful of things that concern me. They may be things that get mitigated this year. And first and foremost, the thing that bothers me right now about Skycoin is some of the marketing speech. I think that when you use phrases like the best or the most prominent or the most advanced blockchain network in the world or the most powerful and complete cryptocurrency platform to date, those things are just exaggerated statements that I think you don't need to say. And I think it sets unnecessary and unneeded expectations on a platform to deliver something that's like so worlds better than everything else when there will be hiccups along the way. Now, this is a nitpick and it's about marketing, not necessarily about the product they've delivered. But I think if you deliver the product first and it exceeds everyone's expectations, you win. But if you deliver a product that could never live up to expectations, even though it's great, you could still end up losing even if you deliver something that's of high quality. So I think marketing, not a big fan of it, but to each their own. Some people may really like that and like how much attention it garners. So I guess that one's a toss-up. Number two is that the absolutely massive roadmap that they have is going to be really tough to complete. You know, I'm looking at this from a developer's perspective. I'm looking at this from also a business perspective. But it's very difficult to build all of these things, let alone how much of it they're trying to build. I know they've had a lot of time, they have a lot of resources, and they're doing a good job so far. The testnet's there, and there's hardware out there in the V1 Skyminer. They have hardware wallet coming, they have the radio transmitters coming, and all of it looks good on paper, but it's gonna be definitely more of a challenge than people realize to get all this done. I'm not saying I don't believe in them, I'm saying I know how hard it is to build this stuff, and I can't even imagine how hard it is for them to build the platform on which other people build things. So that's definitely one thing to note. And finally, the fact that the mainnet isn't out yet, so I can't really evaluate this in its final form, or what is supposed to be its final form, that's definitely tough. It's on testnet, and there's some good data and some sample size out there for how things are gonna be used. They've delivered hardware, they've made Skyminer V1's really solid. They've got a lot of people, a lot of avid fans. I'm sure a lot of avid fans are watching right now, and that's impressive. But I definitely want to see mainnet come off without a hitch, and to see how mainnet does before I can really say, yes, Skycoin's gonna nail it, Skycoin nailed it fully, because obviously mainnet is a big step, and that's really important for us to see. So hopefully that comes soon. Overall, guys, I think Skycoin's one hell of a platform. There's a lot here, there's a lot of stuff here, and I don't think I could ever make one video that encompasses all of it. I was looking at all the documentation, all the websites, and all the things out there, and there's just so much to learn about Skycoin and what they're trying to do. Obviously, the marketing speech sometimes distracts a little bit from the overall mission, but I sit here and ask myself, is there a problem that Skycoin's trying to solve? Does Skywire really solve the problems that we have in the internet? And the answer is, in theory, based on what they have here and based on the progress to date, yes. This could be one of the prominent solutions to the problems that we have with the internet today. Can I sit here and tell you I'm sure it will be? No, but I don't think anyone can. Right now, based on their roadmap though, they have a good vision for this. They have a good idea. They have a strong pitch top to bottom about software, hardware, and the like, because all of it's important when you're talking about redefining the rules of the internet. So I think mainnet release and some of the new hardware, the V2 Skyminers coming out, is supposed to be an absolute tank. And they've got these radio transmitters to help expand the range of the mesh network. I think all of these things could culminate in something really powerful and really impressive. They just have to deliver. And these Internet 3.0 projects are really interesting to me in general, because I do acknowledge what the problem is today, and I'm very closely aware of all the things and all the businesses that struggle because of it. And so I'm a huge advocate for an open internet that's more user-centric and more free for people to express themselves and to feel like they own their data and they're not being taken advantage of privacy-wise, especially. So I tip my hat to the Skycoin folks. I really wish them all the best in building this platform out and delivering. Hopefully we see some mainnet action in 2019. And I'm really excited to read more and learn more about what Skycoin is doing. My thought is, if they win, we all win. And that's the mindset I'm taking forward, and I wish Skycoin all the best. And that said, guys, don't forget to check out some of my other Token Talk Tuesday videos. I've done videos about all sorts of different platforms. They'll be here on the screen for you to click. And I thank you so much for watching my videos, guys. Cheers.